So I spoke with Susan yesterday. Susan's one of our Founders Club members, and she was hitting some hurdles, some roadblocks, some bumps in the road. One of which I'm not going to address here, though it will come up soon, in the sense that I'm going to use what she brought up as a way to share a bigger lesson that I think can all help us be more successful. So more to come on that. I'll just leave that as a little open loop for everybody. But one specific thing she had asked or mentioned was that she had bait that she was using our 3-step blueprint. Find property to use as bait, to then reach out to the active buyers to see if they're A, interested in that one, B, interested in other properties, or C, do you have any properties you might want to sell? And she had effectively been getting crickets. Susan, you can correct me if I'm wrong. You said you reached out to about 25 buyers, got 1 reply. Okay, so Susan's nodding her head yes.
Yes.
It was immediately apparent why. Like literally took me 3 seconds to identify why. And then as I thought about it more, there were other things that were uncovered as well. So I'm hoping that this will be helpful to both Susan and any of you here. And don't get stuck on the specific things that we're talking about with her example, but how can I apply these in other ways, marketing, conversationally, etc. So this is the email and the text that Susan was sending out. I'm going to start by asking a clarifying question, which I think is important for you all to ask, which is, what does a duplex mean to you, Susan?
2 units in 1 building.
To me, that's a 2-unit. That is not a duplex. And the point I'm illustrating is we have our own vernacular as real estate professionals. And that vernacular may or may not match up with the general consumer. Now, this is not necessarily a general consumer in the sense that she's not reaching out to a retail buyer. She's reaching out to an investor buyer. And usually they have a different set of vocabulary than a general consumer. I thought of this when we hung up last night, because you had said that word a couple of times and I didn't clarify what you meant. Because what you described, I would describe in my market as a 2-unit. A duplex to me could also mean that, but more specifically for me, it is a side-by-side building. And so there are duplexes, quote unquote, marketed in my market where it's 1 unit, but it is half of a duplex. But they'll just refer to it as a duplex. Point being, simply changing the word from duplex to 2-unit, that alone may drastically change the response. Number one, okay? The bigger takeaway is make sure that the words you're using in your marketing, in your advertising, are easily understood by the most people possible. And if you're using words or language that is potentially confusing, or I'll call it professional jargon, provide a definition with it. In other words, if you use a word that is relevant to, let me use a different example. If I say USDA financing available, everybody on here probably knows what that means. Would a first-time home buyer know? Probably not. They might, but probably not. USDA financing available, parentheses, 0 down option, like that, right? So like connecting the dots further is important. And just generally speaking, in our texts, in our emails, in our communication, we should aim to communicate at a like 3rd to 5th grade level. We want to be easily understood, because a confused mind says what? No. And then they don't reply. I have to work too hard to do anything with this information. Next. Okay. So that was the first thing that came to mind. The second thing, immediately, and I'm just going to call a spade, and it's probably our fault, but there's a lesson here as well. The subject line sucks. And it's probably our fault, because I think originally that was like the default buyer email originally in when Sean built this, because we were moving fast and just, filling in the boxes. But the takeaway is, whether it's with lead deck or anything, don't use the default ever. Like the default template of anything is certain to get you less response than you might otherwise get. I'll just put it that way. So what would you do instead with the subject line? I would say, for the recipient, for Susan, in parentheses, our off-market 2-unit in Noblesville. I might even say, if I believe this is turnkey, it's fully rented, right, Susan? So for Susan, parentheses, off-market 2-unit, off-market turnkey 2-unit in Noblesville. Now, that may or may not be something to do, because all of the words we use matter. When I say turnkey, it might mean that some of these folks won't be interested because they like properties where they can add value. It might mean that some of them are interested because they just want to acquire assets that are already income producing. If it were me, I probably wouldn't include turnkey because I want as many replies as possible. And if I fill in too many blanks for the recipient, they're less likely to be curious and respond. So if I leave out the fact that it's turnkey, that gives them another reason to reply because they might clarify. Are the units rented or are they currently vacant? What has now started? A conversation. Another example of this, or another illustration of this, put in other context, is deal of the week email. The more information you put in that email, the more specific details you put in the email, the less responses you get. So if I put the price in my deal of the week email, immediately I get less responses because that price creates a breaking point of, well, that's out of my price range. I'm not even going to ask. Whereas what we're trying to do with that email is start conversations. So we want to put enough information to create curiosity, but not so much that they can jump to their own conclusions as to whether or not it works.
So I have a question. So when you're talking about defining things and understanding things, when you're using the word turnkey, to me, for whatever reason, in my mind, I've always thought that referred to the condition of a property. This one probably needs some updating.
That is a wonderful illustration of me breaking the thing that I was saying 5 minutes ago. You're proving my point by also proving me wrong and an idiot. So
no,
that is a wonderful illustration of what but look, you're illustrating a wonderful point. So the right phrasing might be fully occupied, not turnkey. And also, I don't think I would include it either way because that will provide an answer to a certain percentage of people that will cause them not to be interested or not to reply. And all we're trying to do is create a conversation because we do not care. Well, let me take this back. In a perfect world, we want to send this email or send this text message and get the buyer for that property. That's in a perfect world. And also, we want to use that as an opportunity to have more conversations so we can find out, is this the type of properties that this person is interested in? Yes or no? If no, what type of properties are you interested in? Oh, you're not interested in any currently. Oh, and do you have any that you might consider selling? So we can't get to that point unless the conversation is initiated. So I love that is a wonderful clarifying point and reemphasizes the fact that choose the words you include or don't include very carefully. And I break this rule myself often, so I'm preaching to myself as much. Read your communications several times before you start using it. Let it sit for a minute or two and think through. Put yourself in their shoes. If I'm this person, how would I receive this communication?
I've got the hook for you, Josh.
Go ahead.
For that subject line, 2-unit off-market proven income generator. You're not telling them it's rented. You're just telling them it's proven. And now they got to ask questions. What do you mean it's a proven income generator?
Beautiful. Love it. So all of this just on the subject line. The big takeaways in your subject line. With Lead Deck, we have the ability to personalize. So we should personalize because the more you personalize, the more it feels like a one-to-one communication and not a generic blast that we all get and they probably get also. So we have to find ways to cut through and create a pattern interrupt. So for Susan, off-market, 2-unit, already income producing, whatever. My only hesitation with income or cash or things like that is sometimes those are flags to spam. But the thing that I would want to include in the subject line is their name. It's off-market, so we want to include that. Some description of what it is and the area. Noblesville, I think is where this one. Yeah.
Josh, what about proven track record? That gets you away from the cash.
Yeah, that's fine. I think we're splitting hairs there. If she had just said, for Susan, the off-market 2-unit in Noblesville, I guarantee she would have gotten exponentially more replies. Just that alone, because more people would have received it in their inbox. Therefore, more people would have opened it, and therefore there would have been more curiosity. So you can split hairs there, but to me, the non-negotiables would be make sure their name is in it and make sure something specific about the area is in it. That screams more relevancy to the recipient.
Josh, where do we find the custom fields on Lead Deck to use in that when we're using the template? Because I don't know where that exists.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally...
Okay, right there. Perfect.
Yep.
Because I like what you're saying, because I think if you put their name in the subject line and remove it from the body, you're going to get more open rate because people scan
No, I
their.
think it should be in both places, but I'm saying it absolutely should be in the subject line. I mean, we're only at the subject line of this critique. I've got a lot more. And all of this, to me, if I were the person on the other line, it's like a million paper cuts. And so you can be doing, okay, I'm going to relate it back to the thing that I said at the beginning. Do 100 and then ask questions. Because if you do 100, and Susan asked questions after 25 because she has seen or heard other feedback contrary to what she was seeing. But most people, if you set out for 100 and you get to 25 and you're like, I think I'm doing something wrong because I'm not getting whatever, you're still way ahead than if you try and make everything perfect before you actually take the first step. Okay, so subject line, to reiterate, include first name, include the area or some area identifier, and then something else to create curiosity. Moving on. In the body of the email, hi, first name, perfect, no big deal. This one is, on the grand scheme of things, probably irrelevant, and yet everything sort of matters. I wouldn't do line break. I would go hi, first name, comma, and I would just keep it going. We're all living on our phones, and in a perfect world, I want them to be able to open their email and see my full communication. And that means it has to be clear, concise, and not stretching a big span. So I would say, hi, first name. Looks like you're a pretty active investor here in the Noblesville area. ... Are you looking for any deals right now? Or maybe know someone who would be? We have a fully rented off-market 2-unit in Noblesville. And if Noblesville has specific zip codes, like if there's multiple zip codes, that's where I would put the specific zip code. In Noblesville, this zip. Interested, question mark, and that might be it. You might put the, please let me know either way. Now, some of this is getting like granular, let's say, but here's how I receive this first line. It's about me, meaning this is about Susan because she has a fully rented off-market duplex in Noblesville. I haven't even acknowledged them yet. And I and we, you actually don't have the fully rented off-market duplex because you don't own it. We have it. You with that seller. My point about we versus I. The script that I use, the reply template or script that I use when I have someone requesting more information about one of my listings, even that language, one of my listings. I mean, it is my listing, but I will say, hey, James, looks like you had requested more information about our listing at street address. Did you get all the info you were looking for? When you say my versus our, it just feels different. So a little thing, but compounded on top of everything else, it all matters. It all adds up. So we've got a fully rented off-market 2-unit in Noblesville available. Just hits different. And what I know is if you have I have the fully rented, there will be some that ask you, is it yours? Like, are you selling it or what's the deal? When you have we, it just opens it up a little bit. The text message.
I think we also indicates that there's more than maybe one decision maker. And when we say I and my, it's like, the buck stops here. I get to decide. So it's just, again, it's like you say, the words are so important.
Yeah.
So can I jump in here? To me, talking about what things mean, we means that there's more than one of me, like I'm part of a team. I don't know why. Again, that's just in my mind.
Your email is Susan Roberts Group.
Right. So I understand the theory.
I mean, some of that is semantical, but we is you and the seller.
Yeah, I get that now.
Yeah.
I understand that. Yeah.
Just pretend you're English, because I speak in we's a lot, an our, like I would say, well, our Susan, da-da-da-da-da. Well, you don't belong to me.
Got it.
Just as a general rule, when you're sending communication, I look for as many ways to eliminate the word I as possible, just as a general rule. Because when someone sees I, they immediately think, oh, this is about them. And we want them to receive communication as it being about the recipient, not the sender. And so sometimes it's unavoidable, okay? There are communications that you have to send where you're going to have the word or the letter I in there, but usually there are ways that we can limit that. The text message, some of the same stuff already hit here. Hi, first name. This is Susan with eXp Realty, period. Looks like you're a pretty active investor in the Noblesville area. We've got an off-market 2-unit available in, and I would put the zip code again, assuming there are multiple zip codes. I would put that zip code So it makes it very specific. Interested, question mark. Know anyone who might be, question mark. Thanks. I have no idea how much more response or how many more replies you might have gotten, that one versus this one, but I'm fairly certain the answer would be more. It's just a matter of how much more might that have been or be.
Should I
And
wait a few days and send out a revised version to the same people?
you could. In the meantime, did you hit everyone? In other words, you hit everybody in the bucket. Okay. And that was cash buyer or active landlord?
It was active landlords.
And you said this could use some work. Like, how realistic do you think the seller is on price?
I think the seller is realistic on price. I think his rents are too low and it doesn't need major work. He's done all the major things. It just needs to be updated a little bit.
Here's what I
Exactly.
might do in the meantime. Pick a bucket of 10 cash buyers and send the revised script and see just from 10 what the difference in response rate is. And I would love to report back. And then, what's today? Thursday? Monday, go back to, and how many was it, the active landlords?
I think it was like 20.
Monday, go back, revise script, start from scratch, essentially.